Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Science of Spirit. This is about getting positive synchronicity to work for you. Today I was talking to a friend of mine, Trish, and we were both discussing how to keep that forward momentum, of positive synchronicity in your life. And she was telling me about something that happened to her today. She has a regular job, and she has a part-time hobby that she really enjoys, selling clothing online. So she was going to take this class, and she took a day off of work, a vacation day actually, to attend this Zoom class on all kinds of selling things. I'm not sure what the classes were actually about, but she was really looking forward to it. So today arrives, and she gets up, and she's looking forward to it, and her husband's a little feeling kind of down, not in a real happy place, but okay, so she's going to do this Zoom meeting, and she gets in there, and it actually won't let her into these classes, herself and a bunch of other people. So she wasn't able to hear these meetings that they were having. So at first she said, she was thinking that it made her feel kind of like, she wasn't getting anywhere. She took a vacation day, husband's upset, blah, 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 blah. And then she thought, no, I got to keep the forward momentum going. I've got to keep this positive synchronicity. So she got up and she said, you know what? What would I like to do in this moment? And that would make me feel like I was still moving forward. So she thought, I've got Beanie Babies I need to sell. Why don't I do that? That'll be fun. So she listed all these Beanie Babies and sold them the same day. I think within a couple of hours. So then she listed some more. Same thing happened. And, she was getting that forward momentum, maybe in a little different way than she had anticipated, because she thought she was going to do this online class, which was related to what she's doing, with the selling of the Beanie Babies. But then as she and I were talking about this, we kind of thought, well, what is the positive aspect of not being able to have this course online? And then she thought, well, it's possible that she'll probably just get a recording of the whole thing. And that would be kind of good anyway, because then she could go back and listen to whatever parts, she wanted to over and over if she had to. So in a way, she was getting more positive synchronicity by that happening, which I'm sure that's probably going to be the way that goes down, because she not only sold the stuff that she wanted to sell, she's also going to get to listen to the recordings of the class she was taking, where she would have just been sitting there kind of live listening in, which may have been fun too. But had she done that, it would have taken up a good portion of the day, and she may or may not have had time to list things and to make those sales that she wanted to make. So she ended up getting two things. She ended up having both things happen instead of maybe one or the other. Kind of cool. So the feelings of moving forward, joy, happiness, accomplishment are all positive energy. And I think this was a good example of how positive energy can be integrative and a pulling together. In other words, she got this and that rather than a this or that. This or that is more compartmentalized, which is going into the negative realms. When you're compartmentalizing things, you're not seeing the whole. So it's very isolationist, whether you think of it as ideas or, people being separated or coming together. So that's another, gauge of if something is actually in the negative realm or in the more positive realm. And so she and I, having that phone discussion, even gave me the idea of doing a podcast on this very topic. So the energy was actually, pushed forward again. It was very inclusive, because then I kind of got caught up in it as well. So it's kind of fascinating how this whole thing works if you really pay attention to what's going on. So really, I think everybody can do this. It's just a matter of deciding to do so. It's really putting a positive spin on anything that happens to you. And even, sometimes it's easier than other times. I understand that. usually if it's a circumstance that happens to you, you can manage to find something positive in it. But sometimes when you're dealing with other people that you don't particularly get along with necessarily, it can be more difficult. But you will find that if you always find some positive thing to think about that person, because now when you're dealing with other people, they can pick up on what you're thinking. They may not realize they are, but we all do. So even if you're looking at somebody and you are not crazy about what they're talking about, they're abrasive, whatever it is you don't like about them, find something. It may just be they are dressed nicely. They have a nice voice, something like that you can pick out and focus on that and get the feeling of it as, oh, I really like that about them. And see if you don't notice a difference on how they react with you. So when it comes to negativity, negative energy, and negative synchronicity, that brings more of it to itself too. So the person who is being very self-serving, doesn't care about others, all that kind of thing, they're very isolationist. They're not really bringing people together. They're being by themselves. They're out for self, which is very much a compartmentalized, separationist type of thing, thus throwing it into the negative energy category. And with that, it would seem with energy, there's the negative, the positive, but then there's also a neutral zone in the middle. So it's actually a trinity. And it would seem with the physics of the universe, there's actually just a little more positive energy than there is negative. So if a person is on what you would call a downward spiral, and they just keep getting more and more negative, they're going to get to a place where they're just basically stuck. And it's going to require them to just kind of just stop with the negativity, stop with everything. And if they could just get themselves into a neutral spot, then I think nature will naturally start to move them over into a positive vibe so they could eventually get out of that situation that they've gotten themselves into. Yeah, it's really fascinating. It's all really a learning experience, whatever anybody chooses to do. I was listening to a gal online named Kathy O'Brien, and she was talking about how she was severely abused, really abused, as a kid, actually all the way up to like her 30s, and how she got out of it. It did require another person coming along and showing her how to look at things in a different way. But now she's just very positive, always looks at the positivity of things, loves life. And what an interesting thing she chose to do, I thought. I really thought this. I thought, wow, how brave a soul to come in knowing full well, because before you're going to be born, who your parents are, and kind of what the circumstances are of what you want to experience. So she was born fully well knowing she was going to have a horrific childhood. But her doing that and coming out the other side and being able to tell other people who have been severely abused how they can do that too is of huge value. It's just a huge value to people. She's written books and so forth. And she is a really good example of how someone can go from severe negativity to then flipping it and being in a very, very positive place. I hope I'm explaining this well enough so people really understand that this is a really basic thing that everybody really needs to learn to do and teach their children. Instead of, you got to go out and get a job, it's, what do you want to do? What really thrills your world? And same way with teaching kids. I think that teaching needs to be brought into a more fun place where kids are learning, once again, what they're interested in, not a bunch of stuff that they're not. Now, you can argue that they still need to learn to do math and things like that. But as far as other stuff, why not go down the path that they're really interested in? You can always change it. It doesn't have to end up where they started out at. But at least when they're in a good, happy place, then it brings more positive, happy things their way. It's like, let's say there's a frequency 1.0, and then there's a 2.0, 3.0, all the way. And at 1.0, there are certain circumstances you can look at and that you have a view of. When you get to 2.0, you're a little higher and you can see more circumstances, more probabilities, things that can be done. And so as you go up the ladder, so to speak, you see more and more that's available to you that you didn't or couldn't see when you were down on the lower rungs. So that's the way I look at this whole frequency thing. The higher the frequency you have and the more awareness, the more probabilities that open up to you. And it's pretty fascinating. And it can start to get fun. If you can get yourself out of the negative synchronicity and flip it around and then get to where it's fun to see what the next exciting, interesting thing will be in your life. So, another thing is tying this in with service to self or being selfish versus service to others. And when you're doing service to others, it's a very inclusive thing. It's what's best for everybody. And so if it's best for everybody, that means it's also best for you. So you're involved with that too. It's still to your highest good as well. You're not really, in the end, putting everybody in front of you. You're including everybody. Whereas if you're being selfish, but not to be confused with finding your true joy and what excites you, that's a necessity. You have to do that. And you're not doing that at the expense of running over other people. Otherwise, there's an issue with how you're viewing things. But if you are being selfish, then it's pretty much just for you. It's very isolationist. It's not really including other people. I mean, I guess it could, but that's not the general idea behind it. So if you can combine doing things that are to your highest joy and service to others, I think you've got the perfect package there, because then it's a win-win all the way around. And it doesn't mean you have to join some charity or do some huge charitable thing. It could just mean helping somebody out and, finding the joy because you're inspired to do so. Not from the feeling that you have to do it, but from the feelings that you want to do it. So I hope all of you that listen to this do put this into practice, because it makes such a huge difference in your life when you really realize that you have control over it. That it's truly what you're putting out there, what you're thinking, and how you're feeling about it is what you're reflecting back to yourself. So no matter what anybody else does or thinks, if you're on your own path and you do what is to your highest good, then you're going to just reflect back to yourself those beliefs and thoughts into your reality. Imagine what a different world we would be living in if people realized, you know what, that's all I really ever had to do. But most of us, including myself, were never taught this. I had no idea. I'd heard that, find a job that you really like and that sort of thing, but I never really knew why. So it's easy to say, well, why don't I just choose this other job where I'm just making a whole lot more money? Well, there's really good reasons not to do that. And I can't stress enough to people who are just starting out to definitely go into what you really enjoy doing, even if it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of money involved, because somehow, in some way, shape, or form, you will end up with whatever money you need down the line. It'll get bigger and bigger and better and better, but you've just got to keep going with what you truly enjoy and be your true self. I thought I would go ahead and include on here something from Bashar, where he talks about how a higher frequency and a lower frequency can coexist. And I thought this was a really good question. It's this: if you cannot perceive what you are not the vibration of, how can enlightened masters exist in the same version of Earth that people of lower vibrations do? His answer is, they don't. You're seeing a version of them that is applicable to the level of reality that you are on. You have an agreement in your reality that you can at least see part of them as the example that you need to perceive, to see light within yourself, but you're not seeing all of them. And they are choosing to allow a part of themselves to be viewed and contain a part of themselves that is relevant to that vibration. Otherwise, it would be pointless and there would be no interaction at all. So what they've accepted is a definition of themselves and a vibration of reality that contains the ability for you to perceive at least a portion of each other, the portion that is relevant for what the exchange needs to be, but you are not perceiving all of them. And then the person asked, so you could say that they are lowering their frequency so that you can perceive them? Answer, they contain a lower frequency that creates a relevant representation of them for those on that frequency, but it's only a portion of how they experience themselves. Becoming a master is knowing that you already are one. I think I'll leave it at that. I want to thank you all for listening to my podcast. If you are listening on YouTube, be sure to click that bell to be notified when I upload again, and share this and subscribe if you're inclined to do so. I am also available on Breaker, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and Spotify. Thanks for listening.